A debt of gratitude to a sacrifice in Hoggs Hollow.
They left a legacy that saved hundreds of thousands of lives because of the safety regulations that were implemented afterwards.
40 years ago today, 5 men died under conditions that would be illegal today. That's later in Close-Up. 30 years ago, they were common names on Toronto construction sites: Pasquale, Giovanni, Guido, Italian immigrants who helped to build the city. Their legacy is all around us in the infrastructure of the largest city in Canada. But some gave more than their labor, some gave their lives. Tonight, a close-up look at the Hoggs Hollow disaster and 5 people whose death may have saved thousands. Paul Riley has their story.
Though the integrity of his stride may have been betrayed by age, he is no less noble. And he doesn't move nearly as swift as he did 40 years ago, but of course, the situation today isn't as urgent as it was then. March 17th, 1960, the call came out. Tragedy had struck. 6 Italian Canadians were constructing a tunnel at Hoggs Hollow, which is at the corner of York Mills and Yonge Street, when a flash fire broke out. The men were caught in choking smoke. In the mass confusion and panic to try to help them, rescue workers shut down the compressors that forced air into the tunnel. But that caused much of the tunnel to cave in, trapping the men. And when water was poured in to put out the fire, it turned the tunnel into an airtight sleeping bag made of quicksand and muck. Someone had to go in to get them out.
When I got here, there was 2 other guys that I've known. We come and there was nobody wouldn't go down the tunnel. You know, they were all scared to go down. So we decided we'll take a chance and go down. So the 3 of us went down, dark, no lights. We had some flashlights. The fireman gave us some flashlights. We walked in through the locks. We walked in there. It's all muddy. There was water on the bottom. And everything was black.
Well, it was hot and smoky over there. Lots of smoke was over there.
The fire was out by that time?
The fire was out.
Was there any water in the tunnel?
There's about 2 feet of water in the tunnel.
How far in were the men when you found them?
Well, men about 250 feet in.
And I told him, everybody's dead down there. Don't use it. He told me somebody's alive. I heard screaming from the guy. So I got up a light, I went myself to give a help. What I couldn't do, I found the guy is falling in the water. Just the head sticking out.
1 man was rescued that day and 1 body recovered. It would be 3 more days before the other 4 dead men were found. Nestor Buczynski remembers.
It hurts. You know, I used to know the people, some of the guys that I worked with, and you know, there's families. No, their fathers are gone and their uncles.
Grace Fusillo Lombardi's uncle, Giovanni Fusillo, was one of the 5 men who died in Hoggs Hollow.
On a cold day like today, very similar to the day that this accident happened, or the working conditions that were on back then, it just showed me just how much more sacrifices my uncle and other men of that generation had to make in order to make some money to provide for their families.
Sacrifices, perhaps, but many felt the new immigrants were being exploited, forced to work in subhuman conditions, and the newspapers of the time trumpeted as much, calling the tunnel a death trap and a hellhole, and saying the men were treated like animals, sent down with no fire extinguishers, resuscitator masks, or flashlights, and without any telephone system set up. Reports at the time contended that had proper equipment and training been made available, the workers would most surely have survived. Pasquale Allegrezza, Gian Carillo, Giovanni Fusillo, Alessandro Mantella, and his brother Guido, all gone but not forgotten. As a result of the Hoggs Hollow tragedy, there was a mass organizing in the construction industry. Stronger unions were formed. They forced the government to bring in new laws that were better for health and safety and better labor laws that provided protection for workers. 40 years later, the 5 men are being honored.
And I'd like these brothers here right now to unveil that ad so that you can see it. It displays a quilt that'll be the memorial for those 5 men, showing them underground. That ad will be, as I said, in the newspapers tomorrow. It will also be on posters that we're going to be distributing on every job site across this province to remind every worker that the sacrifice that these men made 40 years ago is what we have to be thankful for now.
Laurie Swim has spent nearly a year making the quilt that commemorates the men's deaths. She says it will be on display eventually at York Mills Subway near Hoggs Hollow. She says each of the 5 men had a compelling story. She speaks of Giovanni Facilo.
One of the things that we found out as we started making the quilt is, which his niece Grace told us, is he was found with his wallet and his watch, and the wallet had a picture of his 8-month-old son, and who he had never seen or held. And I think this really tells the whole story about the quilt.
Swim hopes with the quilt on display in a public place, young people may ask about it and learn about Toronto's history and about sacrifices. Grace says her family is proud that her uncle did not die in vain.
From this accident, he left a legacy, along with the 4 other men. He left a legacy that saved hundreds of thousands of lives because of the safety regulations that were implemented afterwards.
Nestor Buczynski likes the fact that the men are finally being honored.
Well, most of the people now, the new generation, they don't know even nothing about it, Never heard of it.
Perhaps now they'll see it and learn of Hoggs Hollow. Paul Riley, CBC News, Toronto.
Now Skylight meets an artist who remembers a tragic day in labor history.
My uncle Alexander, he used to sing and he loved music.
Well, you have to work, really. If you didn't go down, there was 10, 15 guys up on top waiting for a job.
And they didn't know the language, so they figured, well, we'll do it for a while.
In March 1960, 6 men went underground to build a water main for a new Toronto suburb. A fire broke out. The tunnel filled up with water and mud. 5 men, all Italian immigrants, were buried alive. Today, few people remember the Hoggs Hollow disaster. But that's about to change. Textile artist Laurie Swim, with the help of dozens of volunteers, is making a quilt to honor the men who died.
When I was sitting in on a program committee for Mayworks Festival, which is the Festival of the Arts and Working People, a man got up and said that one of the things that we should do is a memorial to the men at Hoggs Hollow. My ears perked up, but I'd never heard of the disaster at Hoggs Hollow. Then I started researching it, finding out a little bit more about it.
We finished our shift about 7 o'clock that night. We were in the hotel having supper when it came over the TV that there was a cave-in or a fire in a tunnel at Hoggs Hollow. We got into the car and drove up to Hoggs Hollow immediately. We got to the site and it was chaos there. I mean, there was, I don't know how many, but like hundreds of people around the top of the shaft. Lots of lights, lots of priests, lots of firemen.
We didn't really know what was happening, but everything was happening all at once. Nobody knew anything definite, whether they were alive, dead, what happened.
It was dark, pitch dark. No light. Smelled of, rubber, smoke, and water. You could hear the water coming in.
In the archives, there is a photograph, an actual photograph of the tunnel, and it has this hazy light. And I knew that the piece was going to have, several elements. The men, of course, and the other element was going to be the tunnel itself, and the feeling of the wetness in the tunnel.
This tunnel was 6 foot in diameter with a 3-foot pipe running through the center of it, so it leaves you 18 inches of room around it, which is not much room.
We were left with the flashlights as far as we could have gone in, and the muck and all the dirt was about 4 or 5 inches from the top. So, and it was almost the end of the tunnel there too.
I remember our family, what they were going through at that time, waiting for the bodies to be brought up. My uncle Guido, apparently his hands were all scraped from trying to claw out.
From stories like these, Laurie pieced together a narrative that's now come alive on the wall.
I tried to do a small portrait of where these people came from, how long they were here, their ages, their personal history.
Guido and Alessandro Mantella were just 23 and 25 years old when they went into the tunnel.
They were in Switzerland before they came here to work. And then they went back to Italy, and my father thought, well, maybe you want to come over here, you can have a better future. They were young. I remember the first day they came to Canada, and we were so excited, and I was standing on this big, huge trunk, and my sister curled my hair. We were waiting anxiously for their arrival, and I had a picture of them. And once they arrived, I was confused who was my Uncle Guido and which one was Alessandro. But we had a good time with them for the short time they were with us.
Pascal Allegrezza was the first casualty, so that's why we've put him in like this. So he's a little further up the tunnel. And next is Giovanni Fusillo. I couldn't choose between the two positions which would represent him more, and so I decided to overlap them. So first there would be this feeling of, like, why me? And then there would be the resignation of falling forward and coming to terms with what was happening to you. And one of the bits of information that we got was from Grace Fusillo Lombardi, the niece of Giovanni, and she said that her uncle was found with his watch and his wallet with the picture of his son in it. I feel that this tells the whole story, that these people are not individual victims. They have histories, they have families, they're somebody's father, they're somebody's brother, somebody's son.
It's been very emotional for us all throughout the years. We remember the happy times, but also then we would think about how they suffered and how they shouldn't have died. And that's what's really upsetting. That's what makes us angry, because they shouldn't have died.
40 years later, the quilt has brought together everyone who remembers the victims.
Mr. Berry, after how many days did they find my uncles?
3 days. The tunnel was completely full. There was a lot of material that they had to take out.
There's Dad down there. I think it was one of the rescuers went down and they heard a moan.
I don't believe that. We were
Why
the first.
do you say that?
We were the first there. We couldn't hear nothing. There's lots of reasons that this happened, and there's also lots of reasons it should never have happened. I mean, they were taken advantage of, is what it was, because they were immigrants. They came to work. They were happy to have a job. They never stopped. A lot of them didn't even want to stop to take lunch. They're scared they were getting fired.
I learned that the younger people now have a voice, and they can refuse. Too dangerous, they're going to refuse, and they will.
The Hoggs Hollow disaster led to an inquest, a massive unionization drive, and finally an overhaul of Ontario's labor laws.
You look at the environment of the city differently, because it has a history, and the history is the people. Now you know that when you go through Hoggs Hollow, that there was human sacrifice there.
Il 17 marzo 1960, una grande tragedia per il Canada, una grande tragedia per Toronto, una grande tragedia per la comunità italiana. Dopo 40 anni ancora se ne parla. Festival italiano di Giovanni Lombardi con Ali Bidivadi era là a una conferenza stampa dove ancora una volta si parla di questa grande tragedia. Seguiamola insieme. Via con il video.
Quello che avete fatto, che ha realizzato posti, ricordare i nostri fratelli che hanno dato la vita per il meglio del Canada. Continuate sempre nell'unione, auguri a Costa e grazie aver potuto avervi qui dentro il nostro centro. È una cosa molto importante quello che si sta per realizzare, ricordare i nostri italiani per la nazione tutta, non per gli italiani, per il Canada.
This tragedy became the lightning rod that sparked the realization within the city that adequate safety regulations were sorely lacking. The city reeled in shock as the details of the futile attempts to save these men exposed the lack of any real emergency response to accidents such as this one. The Breaking Ground Memorial Project is not simply a tribute to the men who lost their lives, but an important opportunity for us to tell the story of those of my generation, how far we've come.
Then there's Giovanni Priscilla, the double figure here, lovingly and being interpreted.
They are present today like they were present 40 years ago, during one of the most dramatic moments for the Italian immigrants in Canada, the Hoggs Hollow disaster.
Years ago, a terrible disaster befell our community here. Italian immigrants suffered immensely when 4 young men, immigrants from Italy, lost their lives in a tunnel tragedy, a cave-in. And from that, 40 years ago, we've now come to a point where we want to remember this project, remember this disaster with a project to perpetuate the memory of these people who died in this tunnel tragedy. And I have with us today Bruno Suppa. He's the president of COSSI. It's an organization that does so much for our community right from the very beginning. And the beginning was around 40 years ago when this disaster befell our community. And now we're also proud to have my daughter-in-law, another Lombardi, and her maiden name is Grace Fusillo. And an uncle of hers lost his life in the disaster. So Grace Fusillo, Bruno Suppa, and Umberto Manco will talk about this disaster. First, we turn to Bruno Suppa.
Grazie Gianni per l'opportunità di presentare questo progetto alla comunità italiana. Il COSSI come patrocinatore di questo progetto farà appello alla comunità intera per partecipare in questo che veramente è un progetto memorabile per l'intera comunità. Noi abbiamo iniziato con l'artista Loris Swim già dal settembre scorso del 1999, questo progetto che sarà completato verso la fine di aprile. Ci sono stati già contatti con il municipio, il nostro sindaco e i vari nostri rappresentanti di inserire questo progetto, questo murale nella stazione della subway di York Mills e Young Street permanentemente. I costi, perché appropriatamente patrocina questo progetto? Semplicemente perché i costi da 40 anni è a servizio degli emigranti. Originalmente nel 62 il costi è stato istituito per servire la comunità italiana, cioè gli emigranti che venivano dall'Italia. Poi nel 69, 7 anni dopo, abbiamo aperto le porte a tutti gli emigranti da tutti gli angoli del mondo. Oggi il costi serve annualmente una media di 23.000 emigranti che attraverso i vari programmi di riabilitazione, di istruzione, di assistenza sociale in vari 11 centri che abbiamo in tutta la città di Toronto e anche nella regione di York, serve questa immensa comunità. Perciò siamo orgogliosi di poter partecipare e dare la direzione verso questo progetto. Grazie.
Passiamo a Umberto Manca adesso, ma prima che passiamo a Umberto Manca voglio dire a tutti che io mi ricordo che Costi è stata fondata da Giuseppe Carrare e Carletto Cacce, MP nostro qui a Toronto. E da là è nata questa idea per aiutare tutti gli emigranti. Passiamo a Umberto adesso.
Ecco, quello che mi ha particolarmente colpito in questa grande tragedia è l'età di quei giovani che sono morti. Giovani che per un tozzo di pane, per sfamare se stessi e la famiglia, non hanno potuto godere di quelle che potevano essere le gioie della gioventù. A 20 anni erano già adulti, a 20 anni erano già uomini con delle grandi responsabilità. E adesso, guardando invece ai giovani di oggi, con la vita facile che hanno, ecco, mi sto chiedendo, Grace, a te che impatto ha avuto questo, a parte il fatto che c'era anche tuo zio, come giovane questa grande tragedia?
Sì, grazie Umberto. È per questa ragione che volevo venire qui oggi a parlare, ma voglio parlare in inglese perché quelli della mia generazione, certi non capiscono l'italiano, allora vorrei parlare a loro. This tragedy really changed a lot in our city. It actually brought in new safety regulations, actually some that didn't even exist. What we have today, you can actually say we can thank these 5 men. It was from this accident that the new safety regulations that we have in place are there. Before, these men went down into this tunnel with no helmet, no flashlights, no resuscitator masks, no telephone system. Also, what I thought was interesting, that in 1960, there was no emergency response. They said in the verdict that there was emergency response for minors, yet for a construction accident such as this one, they did not know how to respond to. In fact, they even insinuated that had such a presence existed, those 5 men might not have died. My uncle was 23 when he was sent down a tunnel unprepared with no emergency equipment. And this I find shocking, that in 1960, the peak of construction, which a lot of us can relate to, our fathers, our uncles, our grandfathers, they all were in this industry, and yet they were sent down into these terrible hellholes without any equipment to help them out.
Come i giovani della tua età hanno preso questa tragedia? Perché abbiamo visto un grosso successo, un grosso seguito a questa iniziativa.
Well, personally speaking, the people I've talked to, they actually are shocked because they don't know about this accident. And that's another reason why we think this mural is so important. They sort of were never given the proper memorial. And I was asked, why after 40 years has this been undertaken? And I thought about how this was sort of an issue that was probably swept under the rug. Who would want to say that they contributed to the death of these 5 young men? My uncle was 23, like I said. The other men were 27, 28. And, you know, you really don't want to say, let's put up a mural to celebrate the deaths of these men. But in fact, 40 years later, we can, because we can look back and say thank you. Thank you to these 5 young men for changing the history of our city.
All right, where do we go from here now? What are you doing? this memorial
Mr.
project.
Supa, would you like to talk about that?
Well, as indicated, the project is on the way to completion by the end of April. Tutti coloro che volessero partecipare a questo progetto possono partecipare tramite comprando un mattone che sarà poi messo in questo murale. Il mattone può essere dedicato a un membro della famiglia, a un defunto, oppure a un'organizzazione oppure a qualche ditta. Come dicevo all'inizio, questo murale sarà permanentemente posto nella subway station per sempre. Perciò coloro che volessero avere informazioni possono telefonare ai nostri uffici 658-1600 chiedendo la signora Maria Cellucci, che fornirà tutti i dettagli in merito. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Bruno Supa. Thank you, my daughter-in-law, Grace Fusilo Lombardi. And thank you, Umberto Manca. And remember, if you want to help how would you say, carry forward this memorial to the 5 people who gave up their lives in the early immigration here in Toronto, don't forget, contact Costi. There's the number on the monitor, 416, the area code, 658-1600, the telephone number.
40 years ago today, Toronto was rocked by one of the worst workplace disasters in the city's history. Today, the victims of the Hoggs Hollow tragedy were remembered, and Global Stuart Sadler was there.
The dead included Pasquale Allegrezza, Guido Montella, his brother Alessandro, John Cariglio, and John Fusillo. The 5 young men were working underground that day, helping to build a water main tunnel when something went terribly wrong. A flash fire erupted, followed by a flood of water, leaving the men virtually entombed in a river of mud. None of them had safety equipment or emergency training.
It was chaos, complete chaos.
John Barrett was a 21-year-old construction worker in 1960 and one of 2 men who rushed into the tunnel looking for survivors.
We went back down and got the first casualty out. We found him half buried. We got him out, put him on the pipe, slid him all the way out, and then it was fruitless to go back in because the tunnel was just filling up with sand and water.
The next day, newspapers told of the horror. The Telegram's Frank Dre covered the story and helped expose the utter lack of safety standards at the time.
You know what cave-ins? Just digging little storm sewers on the sides of streets. It was cheaper to kill the guy than it was to put in the wood shoring. Nobody cared.
Just meters away from where their young lives ended, the men known as the Hoggs Hollow Martyrs were commemorated today. John Fusillo's niece helped organize the ceremony.
What came from it was a legacy that has saved so many lives. And to know that, and know that his death was not in vain, it makes me proud to see that they're going to be acknowledged and recognized for what they did do.
Stuart Sadler, Global News, Hoggs Hollow.
A beautiful work of art to commemorate an ugly episode in the city's history. This quilted mural by Toronto artist Laurie Swim depicts the final moments for 5 immigrant workers trapped in a tunnel as it was hit by a flash fire.
Those who come in contact with this piece learn about a significant part of our history.
The deaths of John Fusillo, Pasquale Allegrezza, John Cariglio, and Alexander and Guido Montella grabbed headlines in March of 1960, revealing the widespread exploitation of immigrant workers at that time.
It should never have happened. There was just no supervision on the site.
Not only was there no supervision, but the men were also sent 35 feet below ground with no training, no hard hats, not even a flashlight. And to make matters worse, when the fire hit, the compressors that forced air into the tunnel were accidentally shut down, causing much of the tunnel to cave in. Nestor Bushinsky and John Barrett were 2 of the first rescuers to go into the tunnel.
We went about maybe 100, 150 feet in, and we found the first body. That was for sure there was nobody else living in there alive because the mud and the water was almost up to the roof.
2 weeks after the accident here at Hoggs Hollow, an inquest was held at North York City Hall. The 3 days of testimony resulted in a complete overhaul of Ontario's labor laws, something that hadn't happened since 1926. There are plans to hang the quilt for public display at the North York subway station. Monica Kim, Global News, Toronto.
Riuniti dietro il municipio di Toronto per commemorare i caduti e gli infortunati sul lavoro. Solo quest'anno si sono avuti in Ontario circa 370.000 infortuni sul lavoro e purtroppo 231 morti.
Queste manifestazioni fanno ricordare alla popolazione in generale l'importanza di mandare un messaggio al governo di fare di tutto per migliorare le leggi, per non fare, specialmente i giovani, per non farsi male.
Commemorazioni come questa si stanno tenendo in tutto il Canada oggi per ricordare i 1000 lavoratori che ogni anno in questo paese muoiono sul posto di lavoro e per cercare di porre fine a questa tragedia umana.
Ancora ci sono delle leggi che non vanno per il fatto di sicurezza sul lavoro. Devono essere ancora fatti dei cambiamenti.
Intanto all'interno del municipio è stato presentato un lavoro artistico che commemora il disastro di Hoggs Hollow, che costò la vita di 5 italiani. Presenti anche alcuni parenti delle vittime che non sono riusciti a trattenere le lacrime.
Noi siamo lieti e felici che hanno fatto una cosa del genere, non solo per noi, ma per tutto il Canada. A così vengono a sapere, dice qualcuno sta che ci guarda oggi.
L'opera è stata finanziata dal Costi e da tante donazioni comunitarie e si spera che verrà esposta nella stazione metropolitana di York Mills.
Incidenti ancora, come sappiamo, accadono ogni giorno nel lavoro, quindi è importante ricordare di fare bene nel lavoro.
Happy Testa, CFMT News.
It's known as the Hoggs Hollow disaster. On March 17, 1960, construction workers were building a water main tunnel below the Don River. A fire broke out and 5 men, all Italian immigrants, were killed. John Barrett and Nastor Bashinsky were members of the rescue team that night, almost 40 years ago.
Knew there was five bodies in there. I mean, you couldn't see, you just had a handheld flashlight. There was no light, no nothing.
And there was really no safety on there, you know.
No safety, no supervision.
You know, no supervision.
There was an ensuing outcry about the lack of safety standards on construction sites, and the incident led to the first real changes in the province's health and safety laws in almost 40 years. But if you visit the scene at that horrific and significant event today, near York Mills and Yonge, you'd have no idea of what took place. But that is about to change. This memorial is being made to honor the memory of the 5 men. The haunting fabric mural produced by artist Laurie Swim depicts the last moments of the victims' lives.
It is also proof that their deaths were not in vain, as many will now learn of how it spurred this city into taking action to ensure that others did not meet the same fate.
Il murale ricorderà per sempre gli immigrati italiani che persero la vita nel tunnel di Hoggs Hollow a North York nel 1960. Swim utilizza il murale per rendere tutte le comunità sensibili alla tragedia.
It's to do with community building. It's to bring people together. The process is as important as the product. It'll definitely be a memorial to these 5 men.
Giovanni Fusillo, Guido Mantella, Alessandro Mantella, Giambattista Correglio e Pasquale Allegrezza vennero uccisi dal monossido di carbonio e dall'acqua che avevano invaso la galleria che stavano costruendo. I 5 erano stati costretti a calarsi nella galleria a 35 metri di profondità, senza alcuna protezione. Poi, quando un'improvvisa vampata percorse il tunnel, i compressori che forzavano l'aria nella galleria vennero spenti, provocando una decompressione che fece crollare una parte della volta. Per Grace Fusillo Lombardi, presidente onorario di questo progetto, l'evento ha un significato del tutto particolare. Una delle vittime era suo zio.
Mio zio non ha avuto la possibilità di avere una famiglia. A 23 anni la sua vita è finita e adesso c'è questa memoria che sarà un monumento che dice: questi qui 5 sono morti, ma ancora la loro storia continuerà.
Il murale verrà messo a dimora nella stazione della subway di York Mills.
È destinato a ricordare una delle più spaventose tragedie del lavoro nella nostra comunità. Il Costi, in collaborazione con la nota artista Lori Swim, ha promosso la creazione di un murale che ricorda la morte di 5 operai italo-canadesi in un tunnel di Toronto 40 anni fa. Il murale intende essere la testimonianza di una tragedia che non deve essere dimenticata.
It's to do with community building. It's to bring people together. The process is as important as the product. It'll definitely be a memorial to these 5 men.
Giovanni Fusillo, Guido Mantella, Alessandro Mantella, Giambattista Correggio e Pasquale Allegrezza vennero uccisi dal monossido di carbonio e dall'acqua che avevano invaso la galleria che stavano costruendo. I 5 erano stati costretti a calarsi nella galleria a 35 metri di profondità senza alcuna protezione. Poi, quando una improvvisa vampata percorse il tunnel, i compressori che forzavano l'aria nella galleria vennero spenti, provocando una decompressione che fece crollare una parte della volta. Ascoltiamo la testimonianza di uno dei soccorritori.
We went about maybe 100 and 150 feet in, and we found the first body. Those for sure there was nobody else living in there alive, because the mud and the water was almost up to the roof.
Per Grace Fusillo Lombardi, presidente onorario di questo progetto, l'evento ha un significato del tutto particolare. Una delle vittime era suo zio.
Mio zio non ha avuto la possibilità di avere una famiglia. A 23 anni la sua vita è finita e adesso c'è questa memoria che sarà un monumento che dice: questi qui 5 sono morti, ma ancora la loro storia continuerà.
2 settimane dopo la tragedia fu aperta un'inchiesta sul caso che portò alla completa revisione delle leggi sul lavoro in Ontario, rimaste inalterate dal 1926. Il murale sarà esposto nella stazione della metropolitana di York Mills.
The Hoggs Hollow Memorial Dinner, it was a beautiful dinner, and it's in memoriam of the 5 Italian workers that died in the Hoggs Hollow tunnel tragedy. There's the Minister of Labor for Ontario, Chris Stockwell, Maria Mina, Minister of the federal government, and there's the plaque, and there's my daughter-in-law, Grace Fusillo Lombardi, and one of her uncles lost his life in the Hoggs Hollow, and she triggered the memorial because she remembers her father talking about his brother who had died. And this is the mural that they took over a year to be done by hand by a famous artist, and it will be displayed at one of the main subway stations here in Toronto. And I'm pretty sure it's the Yorkville, but I'm not 100% sure. There's the plaque that was given and the award given to Grace Fusillo Lombardi. And yes, the mural will be displayed at York Mills subway station for everybody to see. And it's a beautiful thing, and it commemorates 5 Italian immigrants who gave their lives so that we, the people, the community, will have a better, how would you say, a peace of mind, because there are people who say we've forgotten the martyrs, we've forgotten about these poor people who did so much to spark the government to set up construction safety and all kinds of new rules to protect our working class laborers. So having said that, I really enjoyed myself at the memorial, and we'll let you know more about this. Just keep listening to Chin Radio, and we'll tell you when the memorial will be set up at Yorkville.